And welcome everyone to a mini episode of the EWA podcast. I am your host Craig, and we are here tonight to go over the upcoming King of the Ring tournament bracket match by match breakdown with some Craig power rankings at the end. And joining me tonight, the only other person I'm pretty sure that's not in this tournament, at least that I know of. We might find out later, but well, I guess Dylan's not either unless he's holding out on me too. But the only other person in this tournament, or not in this tournament, like myself, Newt, joining me tonight. Newt, welcome to the mini-sode, my friend.
Former King of the Ring winner.
I was gonna, okay, guy, you fucker.
Oh, did I spoil that?
Yeah, I was gonna go over like the King of the Ring tournament, a very prestigious tournament. Many former winners went on to do some amazing things in the past. Just last year, we saw PCO win the 2018 King of the Ring tournament, go on to cash in his guaranteed title shot and beat Ken Shamrock for the title at the later pay-per-view. But using the King of the Ring to springboard himself to that next level, PCO, the winner last year, Al Snow, never won the big title, but a consummate professional. Dylan always down-talks his ability as Al Snow, but the proof is there. Most Civil War eliminations, a King of the Ring tournament win to his name. Finn Balor, Ed had a good run as him. Couldn't quite cash in on that opportunity either. Edge, Shelton Benjamin, Cody Rhodes, Kurt Angle, Rene Dupree, three rather big names in EWA's history. The Rock, Shane Douglas, Jimmy Jacobs. We go all the way back to 2005 to find our guest tonight, with Harry Smith picking up the King of the Ring tournament win in 2005. Newt, do you remember much from that 2005 King of the Ring?
Oddly, I kind of remember most of that like it was yesterday, because that was really the big changing of the guard around here, where I unified all the belts and it became the Triple Crown Championship, and we kind of disbanded the goofy way that things used to be done, and it sort of changed. It's sort of the changing of the EWA, really. So, yeah, so that stuff still sticks out in my mind. I mean, the particulars of the tournament, I couldn't go through in great detail. I know it was me and Dupree, and I think maybe JBL and a couple other people that were around at that time that were Rico Constantino, I think, was in it. But all the guys that were kind of doing their thing and were the big names back then, were in that or were involved in that. But again, it was kind of the changing of the guard period. So I remember most of that pretty well.
I remember just a little bit about Cody Rhodes' King of the Ring tournament win back in 2013. He beat Tomko in the finals. The semifinals and finals were on that King of the Ring pay-per-view. It was a 5 role play limit that week. I remember trying to tell a story over the course of 5 role plays. I forget who I beat in the semifinals of that one. Does it say on here?
I don't know.
I defeated Brent Albright and then Kevin Steen. So I defeated 2 pretty big names in the EWA Pantheon, especially around that time. Steen and Albright were doing pretty good stuff.
I don't remember who was doing that Steen, but he was good.
I want to say it was JD. I think it was JD.
Yeah, I think you're right. And was really good, and it was really coming into his own. So.
And then on the other side of the bracket, Tomko beat Ed, who no-showed as Del Rio, and faced me in the finals. I remember that part. I've told this story, I think, on the podcast before, but I remember waking up that morning at like before my alarm went off. It was like 5:50 or like 6:10 or something. And I just remember like reading the results like on my tiny ass phone at that time, it's 2013 tiny phone. I just remember reading the results like in my bed, and like I read the end and I just like shot my arms in the air. Like, my dog is like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I was King of the Ring. I did it. I finally made it. Yeah. And then,
I'm royalty now.
Yeah. And here I am 6 years later, not even in the tournament. 16 people, Newt. You couldn't even fit me in. That's ridiculous. This is like the biggest, as far as I can remember, this is the biggest King of the Ring tournament we've had, no?
It's certainly the biggest in years. I mean, and I'll talk a little bit maybe about that later, but
yeah.
It's a big one this year, and I felt like we could hold it. And part of the reason, well, I guess we'll just talk about it now. Part of the reason we've had smaller ones in the past. Well, one King of the Ring kind of died off, although it looks like we've done it every year somehow. But it really fell out of favor for a little bit there. It was hard to kind of get it together, and people, I don't know, and I guess maybe because the real King of the Ring has just become, useless. but it became a little bit harder. And one of the things that I had sort of made a push for in certain years was to try to make it only be like new people or younger people, maybe people that didn't have a ton of experience, or really limited to one handler. And this year I was just like, fuck it. I'm just going to throw in the characters that I think are of relevance or that could use this, or I would see maybe getting into a tournament like this. And if it's multiple people handled or multiple characters handled by the same person, I don't care. I'm just going to do it and see if we can get 16. And I came up with 16 pretty easily. And then I was like, do I go to like 24? Or
I was going to say, did you leave anybody on the cutting room floor for this one?
Yeah, there was. And I was like, or do we do some kind of oddball thing where maybe we have a couple of three-ways or something? And I was just like, you know what? 16 is pretty solid. And it worked out with the timetable of when the tournament is. In the last probably 3 years, I've tried to make King of the Ring a bigger deal. And I've tried to make it, very specific. What you get for it and how that can kind of play out to be a major thing if somebody seizes it. So that was kind of the thought behind this. I mean, if you look back at the previous winners, really, it's kind of a who's who. Maybe not in characters necessarily, but certainly in handlers. I mean, almost every sort of major handler who has come through at some point has won King of the Ring. With some, obviously there's been some exceptions. I mean, there were some big names that maybe didn't win it, but almost everybody on the list that won it was a pretty big major player at some point in the EWA. Probably the only real exceptions to that would be maybe Shane Douglas, and because the King of the Ring kind of became the only thing he ever really did, and maybe Shelton Benjamin. I just looked at him and I was like, how the hell did he get on here? I don't really remember a lot of that, but and I forget the handler's name now.
Chris. He was Australian.
Chris, yeah. But he was never a guy who broke into the top echelon, but he was always there and he was a solid hand for many, many years. So even though he's probably maybe the least prestigious, him and Shane Douglas, he was certainly a guy who had earned his keep around here, if nothing else.
I remember him improving like vast amounts with Shelton Benjamin over the course of like a year, from like Civil War to King of the Ring. He really improved.
I'm not sure what happened to him. So because he had been there for years.
Australia's a dangerous place. Something probably got him. A dingo,
yeah.
Or like a python,
so many
or something.
things that can kill you.
Yeah.
So it would not shock me. But yeah, and I mean, like I said, even the guy that's Shane Douglas, and still, I know we joked about that or somebody joked about that on another podcast a while, that he would pop up every now and again. But he was actually a really solid role player, but just not a guy who could ever. I think the King of the Ring was the only time he ever really applied himself to get all the way to the finals and then do something with it. And I think every other time it's kind of like he would get a little close to the top of the card and then just kind of peter out for whatever reason, and then he'd come back 3 weeks later and do the whole thing.
I'm ready for King of the Ring again. Like,
yeah. So, but anyway, everybody else. I mean, The Rock, Jimmy Jacobs, even Andrew Martin, which was Baz, who was or Basil was a big guy in the early days, and Josh, who was Chris Benoit, and a whole bunch of kind of like I said, kind of a who's who. So. There's no King Mabel in there is what I'm trying to say.
That's a shame. He was really a good one. One of my favorites. Favorite run of King Mabel. We'll get to it when I rank I'm going to go 1 to 16 of who my favorites are in this one. But honest to God, and maybe this is because of like the EFED setting, I feel like you can make a case for any of these guys to win this tournament.
Well, let me pull the tournament up so I know who's in this. Yes, I believe you could. When going through, like I said, I decided that I wouldn't do any of the sort of things that sometimes will eliminate characters from participating. And I just said, this guy's been doing some stuff, or this guy, is new but has some potential, that kind of thing. And the kind of people that you would, at least traditionally see in King of the Ring, certainly in the first few. Like I said, I think everybody hasn't paid attention in the last 10 years of King of the Ring. But back when it meant something, that is the WWE King of the Ring. The kind of wrestlers you would have saw in that. So that was kind of the concept here.
Yeah, and I think I think this is a big opportunity for some people to really take like a big step in the Fed, because it's so easy to get kind of lost in the shuffle, especially as a newer character, not having a traditional feud set up and not really having anything to work with whenever you've joined up in the last month or so. Like, this is a great opportunity for those guys, and we'll get to them as we go through the bracket. In fact, let's go ahead and get started with the King of the Ring bracket with the first match. Very top left, we'll start with Tom Lawlor versus Crazy Steve. Is it Crazy Steve or Crazy Steve?
I believe it is Crazy Steve.
It's Crazy Steve? Yes. He spells it crazy like.
He's crazy. That's why he has an extra Z.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the extra Z for craziness. I didn't know that. So Crazy Steve, someone who has joined multiple characters now through Crazy Steve. I believe it goes by Hazard on the board. Done a lot of work the last month, kind of just piddling, not piddling around, but just for lack of a better term, piddling around match to match, trying to get some.
Sure, hasn't had a ton of direction, and I think maybe no fault of his own. He just kind of come in and getting his feet wet and doing a couple of characters. Definitely a guy who came in and I hesitate to say things like this because people get upset, but maybe I didn't have super high hopes for off the applications, and I thought, well, okay. And I even made a couple of suggestions to him because I think he wanted to use Daphne, who maybe is around or maybe is dead. I don't know.
She's dead.
But the point is, I believe that's who he wanted to use. And I was like, well, actually, we have somebody using Daphne. A lot of people just carrying her body around from time to time. And
Joe Bob went ham on that, by the way.
He did. He's not a fan. But anyway. And so I made a suggestion to use Su Yung because I thought, well, that's kind of actually fun to do something a little bit different. And he did. And I thought he was going to be resistant to it. And I think it's worked out well for him. And he's got a couple of wins under his belt. And I think maybe one loss, but it was a competitive match and doing his own thing and bringing in some other characters. So it seemed like a solid young up-and-comer to put into the tournament.
On the other side, we have Tom Lawlor, run by Jeff. Jeff has made it a point to say in the EWA Discord this is his first foray in the King of the Ring tournament with any character he's ever had. Jeff, obviously, a long and colorful history here in the EWA, runs with Masato Tanaka, most recently Kenny Omega for him. Always been, especially the last 3 or 4 years, someone kind of like old Ironsides in a way, like reliable. You could trust. You could trust that he's going to get his part of the feud and his part of the match up. Just never been able to like push through to that next level. Obviously, got a lot of stuff going on in his personal life. I know his work takes up a lot of time. And I think he just moved recently and had some other stuff going on. But Tom Lawlor, someone that, he did that thing with Shamrock in the summer. And that kind of was a good rub for Lawlor. And this is a real chance for Jeff to take a big step with Lawlor, and maybe if he can pick up a couple victories in this tournament, it'll be good for him and the character.
So I don't know how it is that Jeff's never been in one of these before.
Right.
That's an interesting factoid that he dropped, and I don't know if it's just like every time this comes around, he's not around,
probably or something like that. Yeah.
Or burning out
sense.
Or whatever. Yeah, I mean, certainly in the last couple of years, I could see why he maybe wouldn't have been in it, but why he hadn't been in one in the years previous, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, look, I think I've made no bones about it. I think his Tom Lawlor is probably my favorite character he's done. It's been a simple, straightforward character, which I think is a great way to play Tom Lawlor because it's a guy that doesn't have a ton of flash and substance, but he has legitimacy behind him, and what he does well. And not to say that Jeff has necessarily played him like the real Tom Lawlor, but he's just played a version of that I think has worked well. He's picked up quite a few wins and been involved in some things. He hasn't had that big breakout feud, but I think right now this is, the King of the Ring could be his moment, right? This is a perfect opportunity for him to grab the brass ring, for lack of a better term.
What is Tom, like what Fed is Tom Lawlor in real life?
He's in MLW.
Oh, okay. See, that's the one I haven't really taken a look at.
He was, in terms of like the real wrestler, and of course he was a UFC fighter and stuff.
Okay.
So he's, he's not a big guy like Brock Lesnar, but, and he's not polished necessarily, but like I said, he brings that, I would compare him maybe to Dan Severn, a little bit like that.
Whom you love.
Not a huge fan of Dan Severn's actually, but he's, you could tell he's a tough guy, and he tries, and he can do some other stuff. I mean, he's not as, he can do Ranas and stuff that Dan Severn never did. And then he was MLW champion for a little bit, and I mean I wasn't a huge fan of that, but I liked his last title feud and stuff. So point is, and he's not champion now, but anyway, I think he's a solid character, and I think Jeff has played him well, and it's not too unbelievable. So
it's a good first round matchup. I like this one a lot. I don't know.
And I think either guy, like if Lawler wins here, it feels like maybe he's going to go on a tear, and if Crazy Steve wins here, it's obviously an upset. But then it's like,
well, how far can he go? Yeah,
how far can he go? Right, because he just knocked off somebody who is not only has some more stature in the Fed, but also on an out of character level has some more stature as well. So
yeah, good matchup. Let's move on to the next one. Brady Pierce versus Luke Harper. Brady Pierce, a character that Brady has had for the course of over a year now, was a member of the Horde to start out the year, and then kind of that kind of flamed out as the summer went on, and that was kind of the theme of Horde members that were not Reaper and Skrull.
Poor leadership.
Yeah, it is. Starts at the top, cut the head off of the snake. Yeah, and then Luke Harper, who I believe is controlled by Noah. Is that right?
I believe that is correct. Yes.
And Noah, who mentioned that he was having a lot of fun writing as Harper. Harper, a vastly different character, obviously, than Charlotte Flair and Lacey Evans and those of that type. So Harper coming off a tough loss against Ciampa in their feud, but I thought both guys looked really good there. Pierce is someone that's just recently come back into the fold. Brady bringing him back, taking a small break and coming back. Brady Pierce, aside from Richard Blood, is someone that Brady has had a lot of success with. So again, another really good first round matchup between these two guys.
Yeah, I think again you have a similar story to the other one, and I hate to call Noah a rookie because he's been around and he's won some titles and he's been doing things, but he hasn't done a lot with male characters. And so here, he seems like maybe this is going to be his main sort of character, at least for the next few months. And Brady obviously is a veteran who's had a lot of success, but much like Jeff in the last couple of years, maybe hasn't been completely focused or hasn't stayed consistent. And so here's an opportunity for him to get on track to make a big splash. Likewise, Harper. Here's a new character who can kind of come in, and if he upsets Pierce, again, how far can he go? Is he going to go the whole distance, or, and a win over Pierce would be good for him, and likewise, Pierce beating Harper would also, sort of continue to move him up the rankings a little bit. So.
Yeah, two guys I could definitely see, like I said with everybody, that these are two guys that I could see winning the tournament outright if they got going with enough momentum and were able to tell a good story over the course of the next month. Both riders are talented, but not had the measure of single success, especially in the men's division, in their time here, or at least in a while in Brady's case. So really, go ahead.
Sorry. And if you look at it from the second round, right, you run the potential of, is it two guys who kind of have upsets, right? Or is it two veterans now who have made it to the next round? Or do you end up with another matchup where it's, one sort of younger guy versus a more veteran guy? So any way that works out, it's a pretty solid story into the second round. So
yeah. Another great matchup here. Moving on to the next matchup, and two guys who are almost an anagram of each other's names. Reaper and Sean Spears taking on each other. Sean Spears, controlled by Kyle. You and I talked in Kyle's application thread about how he starts to get something going and has that potential, but as someone who follows Kyle on Snapchat, he's just out there slaying puss all the time in Canada. So I ain't gonna knock the kid too hard, And then obviously Reaper, controlled by.
He needs to get his life together and focus on what's important.
Yeah, role playing. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
And then Reaper, controlled by Cuz, just coming off a break where he needed to get his life in order, much like Kyle does, and now bringing Reaper back, a tormented character to say the least, kind of someone you would have expected to come back with a little more fanfare, or with like a bigger hype around it, or like kind of an aha surprise moment type thing. Instead, thrusting himself right into the first round matchup of the King of the Ring tournament. And I know that King of the Ring is something that, Cuz has had his eye on, as he really, after last year falling short, this is, he has this redemption story he wants to tell, but winds up getting a tough first round matchup. We don't know what we're getting with Kyle and Shawn Spears, but we know if Kyle's on his game, then Cuz is going to have his hands full.
Yeah, so you know what? I like the Shawn Spears character, both in real life, although he's been absolutely abused in AEW. But that at one moment that he hit Cody in the head with the chair, he really could have been a breakout star. Now he's probably just going to be a jobber. But and Kyle, I think maybe doesn't know this, but he's probably one of my favorite guys to read. All of his stuff is on point. It's easy to read. It's he always creates memorable characters, but he has never really had the consistency. And I loved the stuff he was doing with the Monster Mafia, and I thought that was going to go somewhere, and then it kind of just fell apart. So it's kind of been Kyle's story for a while now. And Cuz is really talented, but had some stuff go on and lost some focus. He wanted to be in King of the Ring. I think he messaged me last year after King of the Ring. He was like, I got to be in King of the Ring next year. And I would agree with you that, Luke Reaper had a lot of other irons in the fire that probably could have played out bigger. But there is something to be said for, this character here. This is his chance for redemption. The last year of his life has basically sucked in various different ways. I mean, he had to, got in that awful stable and all that stuff. So,
good Lord.
But he's went through a change in this last year. So now a year later, here we go. Here's his chance to redeem himself, and it's a kind of a fresh start, clean slate. And you got two guys who are both kind of loose cannons. So either guy could make a big play at this, or they could completely no show. So you have an interesting dichotomy there where there's big potential for that to be just the barn burner, show stealer match, or we're going to see that one of those guys just isn't once again not ready to deliver on the main stage. So.
Yeah, you definitely hope that both guys show up in a big way, at least for this match going forward. Obviously, if they win, but their track record kind of speaks for itself. Super talented guys who just have a hard time, keeping the momentum going and keeping going in the right direction. So hopefully this King of the Ring tournament is kind of something that they both have their eye on and that they're working towards.
I really hope this is a jump start for both of them and both their characters, if not, the handlers as well. So
yeah, another nice first round matchup there. Finishing out the left side of the bracket, I never know how to say it. It's Tommaso Ciampa, right? Is it Ciampa or Ciampa? I never know.
I don't know. I hate that name. It's my least favorite name in wrestling.
It really is a stupid name.
It's so awful to type out. There's no way to type it out and not constantly miss it.
Tommy C.
Yes. I'm going to start calling him TC.
Tommy C taking on Jon Moxley. If this was a real life matchup, it'd be a very intense one between these two very physical wrestlers. Ciampa obviously controlled by Ed. This is one of the longest sustained Ed runs we've seen with the character for a while. And honestly, truth be told, if you read Ciampa's work, Ed really doing some really nice stuff with Ciampa right now. And I think that'll be reflected in my power rankings later on in this podcast. But, Ciampa doing very well, beat Harper in their feud. Moxley, a newer character, showing up in the EWA recently. Obviously, a long-tenured history, former EWA champion, controlled by Corey. Obviously not Corey now, but coming in as Jon Moxley. Not really, not a huge track record so far since arriving in the EWA. But this is an opportunity for the handler of Moxley to take a giant leap after just arriving here and beating someone who is carrying a lot of momentum coming into this tournament.
Yeah, I think so. I think Ciampa just won a match this past week, not at the pay-per-view, but the week before.
Yes. Yeah.
So he's building just kind of some continual momentum. And, Moxley came in and I think won a couple matches and it looks like he's game to play. So it's an interesting setup. Again, you kind of have a veteran and although if you look at it from the EWA standard, Moxley would be the veteran. But in an out of character standard, at least you kind of have the veteran and the newcomer. And again, it becomes, who's going to make a play at it. Ed has notoriously been a really solid role player in any character he picks up, but has always had some consistency issues, and seems like he really likes the Undertaker.
He's here.
He's here.
It's Halloween.
Dead man walking.
You got a motorcycle just coming up behind me on the video.
Keep on. Anyway, so Ed is it seems like he's really gotten focused and has been willing to kind of roll with the punches and do some things. So could make a big run of it. And I don't think Ed's ever won King of the Ring.
Didn't he do it as Finn Balor? Wasn't that him?
Oh, you're right. He did. Yeah. It's Finn Balor. I forgot he was Balor. But that never quite panned out as well. So he's tasted that glory, but maybe not tasted the full extent of it. So certainly somebody that wants to would like to do it. And as far as I know, Moxley has not had those opportunities. So
it's nice to talk about Ed in this light, but if we're going to go ahead and be honest, like we've been so far in this podcast, Ciampa really hasn't lost since Ed's taken him over, and it's after those losses that Ed has had a hard time continuing on with the character and coming back from being dealt those losses.
Well, and look, King of the Ring is it's real hard to get through that and not have a loss. You have to.
Yeah. Only one person gets to, yeah.
Right. So you can do really well and seem like you're gonna get to the whole thing and then fall short at the end even. So that can be a tough loss to handle for some folks. So we'll see. It will test Ed's mettle any way around it. So.
All right, let's move straight across. We're going to the bottom of the right side of the bracket, where we're gonna have Brian Kendrick versus Tim Storm. Brian Kendrick, a character that kind of had some aspirations of stepping into the world title feud as October began, calling out Pete Dunne and Marty Scurll on Slam. Tim Storm taking the wrestling world by storm and joining up recently.
James Storm's brother.
That's right, yeah. James Storm's brother, yes. And I don't think Tim Storm has done anything in the EWA so far. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he's had a match yet, just applied
He did have a match, a squash match.
Okay, yeah. Okay, then yeah, so just recently on the scene. Kendrick been around for a while. I don't see Kendrick role playing for this match, so that could a big opportunity for Tim Storm to pick up a win over someone who has had a measure of success and worked a rather big program through the summer with Brock Lesnar.
I would say don't always expect what you think. Expect the unexpected, perhaps.
I know what you're saying, and I understand that.
I'm not going to tip my hand too much. But Brian Kendrick made it known, at least from an in-character standpoint, a couple of weeks ago when he was trash talking to everybody, that he wanted to be a part of the King of the Ring. So we have granted him his wish. What becomes of that, we will see in the weeks ahead, I suppose.
Yeah.
But as we have seen with another Storm, just because you expect something to happen, Toni Storm has had quite a bit of success since her handler departed. So I would not be I'd be remiss to say don't count Kendrick out. Tim Storm I think had one match and I think sent me another promo or something somewhere. So it's looked pretty solid thus far. I like the angle of somebody, trying to play off that real life Tim Storm thing where, maybe he didn't get a good contract. He's just here on a walk-on, if you will. Yeah. And so trying to prove himself. So here is a good opportunity to do that. And Kendrick, of course, Kendrick's storyline is kind of similar where he had done some things in the EWA in the past and had drug issues or something and has been trying to reestablish himself. So at least from a storyline standpoint, they both this is a match they can't lose. So, yeah,
a pretty fun one. I'm interested to see what happens, and hopefully Tim Storm is around and been on the forum and knows that they've been booked in this huge tournament, so they can make plans. I mean, that's kind of you look at guys like Tim Storm and Moxley and Crazy Steve, and you're like, okay, I hope these guys know that it looked at the booking thread and seen, oh, I'm in this tournament, okay, type thing. So
that is, what that happens a lot, especially when we get new people in, and things happen, and sometimes even they'll ask for a match, and then they don't get on for like a week, and you're like, did they know that we put them in a match? And so I'm always hopeful that they pop in at least in time to find out what's going on, or somebody else gets a hold of them, or they find out through some other means, whether it's the Discord or social media, Twitter, or whatever, the EWA Twitter. Somebody sends them a smoke signal or
Snapchat, yeah.
Yes, Snapchat, the dark web.
The dark web, yeah.
my webcam sessions at night, whatever it is.
We send him an EWA shirt with their booking in it.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's move up the bracket one and find Cesaro versus Brian Pillman Jr. This one's kind of up in the air. Triple threat match on this week's Slam to determine if Cesaro will keep his spot in the King of the Ring tournament. Could be going to Chris Hero or Samoa Joe. Two guys who are actually not in the King of the Ring tournament that I can see Dylan and Josh could potentially wind up with Cesaro's spot being held by Jared. And he's taking on Brett's character, Brian Pillman Jr. Ironically, these two guys, both with two characters in this tournament, and with two characters who could easily win this tournament. Cesaro, been a part of the Kings of Wrestling for the better part of a year now, held the tag team titles with Chris Hero throughout some of 2018. Brian Pillman Jr., a character that Brett picked up around April and did some stuff with, kind of dipped his toe in some high-level feud with the Horde and the Reaper and Marty Scurll and Fit Finlay for a while, so Pillman has kind of had that rub at the top level. Brett obviously very good and comfortable at writing Pillman Jr. stuff, and Cesaro has been a mainstay for well over a year in the EWA. Pretty good matchup here between writers and characters, for sure.
Well, yeah, and when you think back to Jared and Brett having that really great feud with Shamrock and
Trevor
Mann, so two guys that know not only what to do in the ring, for lack of a better term, but know each other well and have produced really quality stuff when against one another. As far as Cesaro, so if you look, Hero and Joe, I think could have been, if you'd asked me 6 months ago who was going to be in it, those guys would have been kind of top ballot performers that you would have had in this tournament. But in the recent weeks and months have kind of fallen off a little bit as the Kings of Wrestling have kind of fallen apart, and Cesaro is really the only one who has made a big dent in the last couple of months. And so, they have this feud going on, and so I think it's a fun little stipulation where, okay, well, if they can win, then they can take that spot away from Cesaro, which would, of course, just add more fuel to that fire.
Yeah.
And if Cesaro can get past them, then he can move on and, make his the crown his goal. So, and Brett has been done really well as Pillman, and everybody really has enjoyed that. So,
yeah, another quality first round matchup between two guys who could feasibly go on and win this tournament. Like there's, I could see that happening for either one of them. So, moving on up to the next one. This is whenever you talk about the King of the Ring tournaments from the mid to early 90s, there was always that one that either was like the end of a feud or like jump started the next feud for that person. MJF taking on Show E. MJF had it out for the Flamingo family 4 weeks now, multiple months between him and Bubba, and now he's taking on Show E in the first round of the King of the Ring tournament, and this could be MJF trying to finally put an end to the Flamingo family being a thorn in his side. Show E not had a ton of single success controlled by Cleve, and the EWA mostly, I don't want to say predetermined finishes for Show E, but mostly he's been used as, when Cleve didn't want to hurt Bubba or, not take a huge risk, he's kind of put Show E in that situation. But Show E currently has the soul of a plastic flamingo living inside of him, and MJF likes a scarf. Ladies and gentlemen, the EWA, where anything can happen.
That seems like a perfectly logical build-up to two guys fighting. No, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought Show E beat MJF a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that was not a clean finish, though, right? Like, that was...
Right.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
But yeah, so they have, at least from an in-character standpoint, have hooked it up. And actually, no, looking back on it, it looks like MJF actually won by DQ. Nonetheless, but they have crossed paths a little bit. If you look at it from a pure character standpoint, the Big Show had some success and then some less success, and then transformed into a Flamingo and has had, been a steady part of the program and has had some mild success. And MJF has been pretty solid since coming in, but hasn't really, necessarily broken away from the pack. And here's an opportunity, as you said, to sort of either kind of put the end to that feud, or maybe a new chapter in that, and then also could possibly make a run for the King of the Ring crown. So I mean, I think, what would be better really than a flamingo in the body of the Big Show, a plastic yard flamingo nonetheless, in the body of the Big Show as the King of the Ring.
Yeah, you know what? As you were talking,
if anybody could do it, Cleve can.
Oh yeah, exactly. As you were talking about it, I was like, I said I could see anybody winning this, but can I really see Shoei winning this? And then I thought for a few seconds, and I was like, yeah, like I can see Shoei winning this tournament and being the King of the Ring. Yeah, so these are two riders who have definitely interacted and know each other. They have a lot to build off of, at least for their first round matchup. MJF is someone who, like you said, I thought, as much as I love Cleve, I really thought at All Hallows Eve, like Jared was going to take that next step and pick up that victory. Came up short. Cleve's work was stellar that week. So Jared has a chance to turn around and hopefully bounce back from that tough loss and really take a shot with MJF and push him far in this tournament potentially. He's got the roughest quadrant of the bracket for sure, I would say, and I think a lot of people would say that too, but he's also talented enough to come out of there as the person advancing from that too.
Well, and you like to think, if you can get out of those first couple of tough first round matches, everything else is a breeze, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the case, but at least on paper you would think that. So, and I mean, Jared, look, he's been looking for a really great breakout moment. He's kind of always been, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. So, I think a good opportunity for him. But looking back, Cleve's one of those names that you would have thought would have been in the King of the Ring, and Bubba Ray, I think, has been in the finals a couple of times. So certainly, maybe Shoei is the character to do it. So
wow, what a turn of events that would be if that were the case. I would love to see it though.
It would certainly be interesting television.
It would be surprising. And then the last first round matchup, obviously the one that we all kind of saw whenever the brackets came out and our eyebrows immediately went up. Pete Dunne coming off a tough loss of the EWA World Heavyweight Championship.
Against Ryan Shamrock.
Against Ryan. Ryan Shamrock. Taking on the former.
Can she do it?
Yeah, I think she can.
In her debut.
has ties to Val Venus in the past. And
Yes,
I feel like Ryan Shamrock actually did something in the EWA.
I'm sure.
In like the 10 years I've been here.
Yeah, name any obscure person that nobody has thought of in 20 years, and they've probably been.
Doink the Clown.
Has done something. Doink really should have been in this.
Doink should have been in this, yes. I have a couple people that I thought should have been in as well, but no, this is a huge first-round matchup. Two former EWA World Heavyweight Champions within this very year, in the year of 2019. Both of these guys held the World Heavyweight Championship. Big-time first-round matchup. Obviously, Shamrock, as far as the character goes, a little more rusty lately than Pete Dunne. Pete being rather active more recently, but Shamrock hasn't taken a huge break. He was active throughout the summer, and this is a big one, Newt.
Yeah, I think this is Shamrock made some intentions earlier in the year to be a part of the King of the Ring when he was kind of just bouncing around, maybe not doing things, but nothing major. And I was, it's really interesting because I had thought after All Hallows Eve, I thought, it would be really great if whoever loses the world title or whoever loses the world title match is in the King of the Ring. I think that'd be fun, and it would add some gravitas to the whole thing because, here this has been the top guy or one of the top guys can, no matter who won. And so I was really excited when John was like, yeah, you know what? I'd love to throw my name in the hat for the King of the Ring. And I was like, perfect. Like, because
you're lucky because I wouldn't have said that. I've been like, screw you.
Well,
you hate me.
Yeah, that was the thing is I didn't discuss it with you guys. I was just like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll throw it out to him. However that shakes out. And then when he said that, I was like, that's perfect because that's really what I want to do. And here now we've given him a big challenge, which I think you have to. and at the same time, Brad Shamrock, I think that this is a big match that he would look forward to and could really, here's a chance to really prove he's still the man and still has it. And so you could go either way, obviously, but obviously big names in both of those in that match. So.
All right, now I'm going to name my favorites for this King of the Ring tournament, starting at number 16, and you can kind of chime in, Newt, and talk about whether you think I might have this person too high or too low, and it'd be pretty dickish of you to say I think this is too high. I think he's not.
He sucks.
Yeah,
he's not winning.
The tough part is that somebody has to be number 16, and I'm basing that off of I have them in the wrong order, so that's awesome. Okay, there we go. I put how did that even happen? I put Tim Storm number 16 just because lack of activity in the EWA so far. Just recently got here. I literally put him at 16 because I'm like, does he even know he's booked in this thing right now and could potentially no show? Again, his match won't be until next week, and he has a real tough road to hoe with Brian Kendrick. So that's why I put Tim Storm at number 16.
He's like the guy. What's the guy in the Beyond the Mat documentary that's trying to get booked?
Oh God, what was that guy's name?
And he's out there jumping on his trampoline. You never know when your next match is.
Yeah, didn't he do a dark match on WWE and Cornette was in the back watching him or something?
Yeah,
I don't remember. It was something like that.
Yeah, so he's not sure if he's booked or not, but I think that's fair. He's probably got the least amount of experience of everybody here, so it has to be a dark horse candidate from not a real top ballot guy because we haven't seen a lot from him. So yeah. I liked the activity, like I said, that I saw in the very beginning there, but like you said, he may not even know he's booked. So.
And kind of along those same lines, at number 15, I have Jon Moxley there, and that's simply because, he is someone who hasn't done a ton in the EWA since joining. I think you said he's picked up a couple wins through October, but there's a real chance that he may not know he's in this tournament either. And his matches this week, also a real tough matchup for him in the first round against Ciampa. So a potential tough road to hoe for him as well.
Yeah, look, you got to give new members an opportunity. He was last on the 27th, so
okay.
Time is running out. But he's been here, so good opportunity for him. But yeah, I think again, just based on not knowing what all he can do. Will he show up, or will he show up with a game face that can get him further in the tournament? I think that's fair to put him down lower again, just because you don't know the handler that well. So
yeah. Number 14, I have Crazy Steve, and he's just down there because he has a tough matchup in the first round with Tom Lawler and a potential second round matchup against Harper or Brady Pierce. Crazy Steve, someone who's really trying to find their footing under him. 14 seems a bit low for him because he's shown some real potential the last couple weeks, or before the pay-per-view the last couple weeks, but it's kind of weird whenever you're kind of tumbling through these match after match and then you don't have anything going on for the pay-per-view. It can kind of be not... What's the desire to do something? What's the word I'm missing here? It could kind of kill your desire to not be on that.
Sure, reduce your enthusiasm.
Reduce your enthusiasm to be here in the EWA whenever you miss out on a pay-per-view card and you don't get a segment up. So he's gonna have to bounce back and try and win this first round matchup.
Yeah, I think he's been on, so I think he's aware, and he's every time he's had a match, he's role played for it. So I look forward to seeing what he's doing. I think this could be one of those sleeper guys who, if he applies himself or whatever, he could surprise a lot of us and maybe not only knock out Lawler, but make a good showing in the tournament. If not go the whole distance, even if he's not, he's not the absolute best. All it takes is a couple of things falling in the right direction, and somebody who is really solid can pull it out unexpectedly. So
I'll freely admit, for me, 16 and 15 were rather easy, and then 4 through 14 were really interchangeable because there was a lot of guys kind of in the same area there. At number 13, I put the Reaper there. Obviously, somebody that has a lot of history in the EWA, but took that time off. Kind of coming back, like I said, with little to no fanfare. Big time redemption storyline, but gonna have to find a way to string some wins together to really make that story work. Cuz as somebody who has struggled with focus and consistency, so maybe that's a reason why I have him a little bit lower as well. But you guys know my history with Cuz. He and I are very close, talk a lot, and he's someone that I believe in. And I think
that's not what you were saying before we started.
That is true. He's a piece of shit, and I know he's someone. I put him this low because I want to be proven wrong for putting him this low, and I hope that's what he does.
So, look, Cuz the Handler has had a bunch of false starts in the last probably 4 or 5 months. And then the Reaper, as a character, yes, he has this redemption storyline, but you're absolutely right. He's kind of coming in cold. His last sort of thing just fizzled out, and it's going to require him to write some compelling stories. And Cuz is a guy, and I think I've, told him this before, who sometimes goes too far, and he wants to give you too much, and it's pacing will be everything in this tournament. So he might blow his entire really good storyline to get him through that first match and have nothing for the rest of the tournament. So it'll be interesting to see if he can deliver, can he deliver, and can he deliver in a way that will get him through to the end.
Totally agree. At 12, I have Brian Kendrick. Again, just kind of in the air as far as the handler goes and what all they're going to be doing. Kendrick is somebody who has the potential to win it all, has a story coming into it, was doing really good things, but until I see their work and know what they're doing as of next week, he's someone who kind of just has to hang out in this spot, but could potentially be higher on this list.
Not to not talk about Kendrick, but I was just thinking, what a story it would be if the Reaper wins the King of the Ring and then, potentially could line up with a match with Skrull. So a lot of really interesting things going on. As far as Kendrick, like I said, I'm not going to say too much on that, but I wouldn't count him out. As of a couple of weeks ago, he had a really competitive match with Crazy Steve, and I think he won that one. So hasn't had a lot of wins. Had multiple losses to Brock Lesnar, and kind of had a rough go of it, but has always been consistent and has built up a good story and wants to be part of this. And so we'll see what happens in that match.
Well, you can say that, but screw you, I'm counting him out. So number 11, number 11 on the list is Brady Pierce.
It could be Larry Kendrick.
Barn Kendrick. Brady Pierce at number 11. Brady is someone controlled by Brady, kind of been all over the place, looking for Brady, the writer, to really find, and with the character too, really find some level of consistency. Obviously, with Super Bowl season coming in, that's where Brady kind of really shines and kind of hones in and does some of his best work, to be honest, of the year. So hopefully he's able to find that. Someone that would not surprise me seeing him win maybe 1, 2, maybe even get to the finals of this thing with 3 wins. But he's going to have to really step up his game and take it to a level that he's not written at in quite a few months.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, I'm Brady Pierce, the character. I know almost fuck all about the actual wrestler, and Brady's interpretation of him has not always been clear. And even the current run is it's a little bogged down in the weeds, as Brady has fallen victim to in the past. So I think he has a tough road ahead of him. But I think if he buckles down and focuses, when he tells a concise story, he's really good at it. So, and I love those sort of old school stories, and I know Brady does too, and I know he can tell those when he wants to. So, again, and I feel like I'm repeating myself here a little bit, but a lot of this is on the handler to say, I'm going to come out, I'm going to craft a story that's going to take me, week by week through the King of the Ring. So.
Yeah, and that's fair, and like this part of the rankings to say that. So For sure. Number 10 on the list, Show E, put him right above Brady Pierce there. Show E is someone who's kind of been consistent at the same level over the course of about 7 or 8 months, but not been really challenged to take it to a higher level. Cleve can do that. We've seen it with his Bubba stuff. It would be easy to kind of, not take this as serious with Shoei, but I don't think Cleve's going to do that. His stuff with Honky Tonk Man has been great. And, Newt, if you could just do me a favor, my group text is asking you to give some love to the Honker and Jerry Lawler.
and how would I give love to those?
Just some props,
gentlemen?
some feedback, and talk about how much you appreciate the Honker.
You know what? I love those guys, and I thought I tried to show that in the multiple man tag match a couple of months ago, where they just had sort of ridiculous ways to, but crafty veteran ways.
Yeah.
I love writing matches for the Honky Tonk Man because even in his prime, Honky Tonk Man did virtually nothing, and he's made it clear that his whole goal, love from one of these shoot interviews years ago, I heard with the Honky Tonk Man, he's talking about, he goes to some indie show and some guy's like, oh, the ropes are too tight. He's like, oh, don't worry, I don't hit them. He's not even going to bounce off the ropes. So I love writing a Honky Tonk Man match, and I'm a huge Jerry Lawler fan. So I love that team.
All right.
And I love the stuff they do is hilarious. And really, Jimmy Hart, to me, is the star of that trio.
And just
they
a
write
great
some
music
really
writer.
funny stuff. What's that?
And he's a great musical writer, too.
Oh, yes. Keep on dancing. But, I love that group. As far as Shoei's placement on here, look, he is the largest man in the tournament, and he has the smallest brain of anyone in the tournament.
Now that makes sense.
So he has two extremes going on.
Yeah.
Look, he doesn't even know what the King of the Ring is, so someone's going to have to explain it to him. But if it goes anything like some of the other things that he's learned how to do, there could be no stopping him. So
interesting take on that. At number 9, I have Sean Spears, just because Kyle, really talented writer, but just recently came into the Fed with this character, so looking to get something going with him. I know what Kyle's capable of, but 9 seems like a fair spot to put him at on this list.
Yeah, I think that's fair. A guy with a ton of potential, but look, we haven't seen a lot out of his Sean Spears yet. This could be a moment where he just sort of, gets in the driver's seat and hones in and really gives us a great flesh out of that character. Or it could be he's not feeling it and he doesn't get it. Like I said, I think the Spears character has a lot of potential, and I would love to see Kyle tap into that and make it his own thing.
Absolutely. Number 8, Luke Harper. Just because he came off that tough loss to Ciampa, I couldn't really justify putting him higher on the list, especially higher than Ciampa on the list. Noah has had a measure of success, like we talked about earlier, but not in the men's side of things. But he has a winnable first-round matchup. And honestly, Tom Lawler and Crazy Steve, potential second-round matchups, that's a winnable match for Noah as well with Harper. So he has a chance to, if he can step his game up, really make some noise, at least on the left side of the bracket in the first few rounds.
Yeah, I think Harper's a pretty good character. He's come up with a unique angle on him. And you know what? I think Noah is somebody not to sleep on, because he's been in the women's division, and it's so sometimes it's kind of dismissed. But you know what? He's been fighting John and Dylan and all kinds of really talented people and winning in that division. So Harper could be someone to watch out, not just in this tournament, but in the future. And I think Noah is going to be one of these guys that in a year or two, everybody will be like, oh, yeah, Noah's one of the toughest guys around. So I would not be shocked if he did really well in this tournament.
Same here. Number 7, Brian Pillman Jr., taking some time off. Pillman not really been active throughout the summer, but Brett, we know what he's capable of. We know what he's able to do, and I know personally, so it kind of seems a little bit tainted for me to put him this high on the list with all that, but I know Pillman is a guy that he is looking to take far in this tournament, and when Brett has his mind set to something, that's he's going to be a tough guy to beat. So that's why I put Pillman at 7 on this list.
I think Pillman Jr. is a great character, and I think Brett is a great handler. However, I would say that you know what, he's coming in cold. He doesn't have a lot. So Brett has to, again, it's one of these people where you have to craft a really interesting story. And so it'll be up on, and we know Brett can do it, but it'll be up to him to, why is Pillman's journey to the crown, good and interesting. So that's tough to do sometimes. Some, like I said, people that have things going on, they can kind of use that, and you coming in cold, you kind of don't have that momentum. So that puts a little extra effort that you have to put in. So.
At number 6, Ken Shamrock, Brett's other character, probably getting the nod over Pillman. He's been as inactive probably as long as Pillman, but just the measure of success that he's had with Shamrock, former Super Bowl captain winner and a EWA World Heavyweight Champion, picked up a tough win over Trevor Mann last year that led to that captain spot. So Shamrock is a character in the very least who knows how to come up big in big situations. So King of the Ring could be a real testament of that for Shamrock as well.
How many times are you going to put Brett on this list, really?
And at number 5, Val Venus.
Look, I think Shamrock, although, you could argue he's coming in cold too, he has a lot more to pull from, right? He has a history. He was champion earlier this year. Just as an older character, I think he has a little bit more resources, and Brett does well with those type of characters. So I would agree. He's a one-up at least on Pillman because there's more for him to pull story from.
Yeah. Number 5, Cesaro. That's if Cesaro winds up in the tournament, so it's kind of weird to put him that high on the list, but honestly, I'd be comfortable swapping out Chris Hero and Samoa Joe in that spot either. Like you said, whenever we talked about his matchup, if this was about 3 months ago, Cesaro might be number 1 on this list. The Kings of Wrestling were really hot throughout the summer, and especially the early part of 2019 as well. But Cesaro is a character that Jared is really comfortable with, and I really love the formatting of his Kings of Wrestling role plays as well, for what that's worth. I think they're wonderful and easy to look at, and I just kind of like that format style he uses for Cesaro. But I really think that, this is... I know he's got his eyes on MJF, but don't be sleeping on his Cesaro character at all.
Yeah, I think that's a solid pick, and I think really anybody who, if it swaps out for one of the other folks that are in that three-way, look, any one of them could be seriously dangerous, and if they win that triple threat, then obviously they're, serious about putting down some major wins. So I think that's a fair place to put Cesaro.
At number 4, I put...
And friends.
Cesaro and friends. Cesaro and company. At number 4, I have Tom Lawler. Simply for the fact I know Jeff's going to be motivated coming into this. A fully motivated Jeff is probably something we haven't seen for quite a while in the EWA, I'd say, as far as this goes. Lawler is someone he's really want to get his footing underneath him and push him into a potential larger role in Super Brawl season. Lawler has a winnable first-round matchup against Crazy Steve. That kind of top left quadrant of the bracket is kind of wild. I feel like it's 4 rather equal riders up there. Not that it's not equal throughout, but as far as like...
It's definitely unpredictable up there. It could go any way.
Yeah,
really.
As far as like recent activity as well as riders go, like that's kind of a wild West situation up there. But I really do look for Lawler to come out of that top 4 quadrant if Jeff comes out and puts up his best work with Tom.
Yeah, I think that's, again, another solid ranking. If Jeff puts his mind to it, there's really no reason why he can't at least get to the finals. So,
at number 3, I have Tommaso Ciampa. Ed is somebody who has won King of the Ring before, and strangely enough, I think his Ciampa work is even better than his Balor work. So if Ed can just keep his eyes on the prize and, eyes forward and move towards telling a story over the course of this month, a very winnable first-round matchup for Ciampa going up against Jon Moxley because you're not sure what you're going to get there. Second-round matchup could be extremely fun down there in the bottom left. Ciampa versus the Reaper or Shawn Spears could be a huge matchup. Definitely pay-per-view level worthy second-round matchup, and I hope that Ed is able to stay focused and beat Moxley like he should and get to that second round, and I will be excited to read the role plays of whoever he winds up facing in the second round potentially.
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of great points there. Look, if I was doing a similar ranking, I don't know, I might would have Ed a little lower. or Ciampa a little lower, just because Ed's track record is not always the best, and he's done really well here. So you have to see if he can do it. But I tell you what, Ed is dangerous when you dangle a golden carrot in front of his face, and if he looks and he says, "Oh, I only have to win a couple of matches here to become King of the Ring," that's when he kicks it into that next gear, and he's focused, and that's going to be it's going to make a hard match for Moxley and a hard match for whoever he meets in the second round if he gets past Moxley. So
yeah, really hope that he's able to bring it in this tournament. 2 and 1, I'll go ahead and reveal both of them. 2, I have MJF, and number 1, Pete Dunne. It just makes sense. Both of these guys coming out of high-level title feuds, both of them falling short in their bid to become the respective champions. MJF against Bubba, and Pete Dunne against Marty Scurll on the EWA World Heavyweight title level. Their placement on this list hinges on their ability to bounce back and tell the story going forward. Pete Dunne, really tough first-round matchup with Ken Shamrock. If he was against literally anybody else, I think, in the first round, I would have no problem saying winnable match. We'll move on to the second round knowing John. But that is such a tough draw for him. MJF with a winnable match against Show E, but given the history between those two, anything wonky could happen, and Cleve could easily beat MJF. But that's who I have at 2 and 1 on my list.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at it on paper, probably the most solid picks there, right? MJF, no matter how you look at it, has been a guy with a ton of potential, and you just kind of see it wouldn't take much for him to explode and become, a huge star here. And look, Pete Dunne, he's just had the title, had a nice, pretty successful reign. Fuck, only lost one match this year by pinfall. So, on paper, he's got to be the favorite. So no doubt about it. And then, fuck paper, it's John. So,
yeah.
John is not going to no-show. So if you're booked against John, he's not going to half-ass it. He's not going to no-show. He's not going to, and that will put him ahead of a lot of people that are riskier in that regard. So, anybody who's not feeling it one week or whatever, John always comes to play. So that's where it could be dangerous.
And I think he's motivated now too. Like, I'm not saying that he wasn't motivated to win and keep the title, but it's.
Well, I think he's got a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So,
yeah.
And I think for his character, it's an interesting time. Now that could be bad. He could be trying to find himself and figure out what he's doing with him, and that could, it could not be compelling storytelling. But at the same time, he also just had something really big happen to him, so you would think he could really spin some great stories with that, and it's John, so chances are he will.
Well, this is the top 16, and honest to God, I mean, you could make as compelling of a case for Storm, Moxley, and Crazy Steve as you can for Dunne, MJF, and Ciampa. It's crazy to think that just with these brackets alone, Newt, you can make up 4 considerable Super Brawl teams from this alone. And I think that's exciting as we head into the exciting time of the year for the EWA. King of the Ring, right into Super Brawl season. I got to admit, I didn't think when I took a step back that we had enough people to flesh out a 16-person tournament, but when you look at it, it's really there. And like I said, any of these guys could come out victorious in that tournament, and I think that speaks to the level of competition we have right now in the EWA. Some people are going to get made in this tournament and take big steps for their characters and build that momentum into Super Brawl and find themselves smack dab on a major role in a team. And I am excited to watch this tournament play out, read the role plays over the course of the next 4 weeks, and see who is crowned King of the Ring at the end of November. Any final words as we end this one up, Newt?
Yeah, I would just say that everything you said was absolutely correct. And the other big thing is, even if you don't win this tournament, everybody has the opportunity to. Nobody's in a match where if they lost, it's going to ruin their career. It's all set up to everybody could come out of this with a story. 16 guys could leave with a unique story to come out of this with, and have some momentum heading into the next couple of months. Even if you lose in the first round, there is a story there that can be told. Yeah. So you don't often get an opportunity to do that. You lose a random match on Slam, chances are there's not a huge story. This is a story, no matter if you lose or win. So I would say, look at this as a huge opportunity to take this character and do something with them.
For sure. I want to thank you for joining me because this was a lot of fun. I think this was really good. People love, I think the podcasts have struggled recently because if people aren't hearing others talk about them, then they're really disinterested. So we talked about everyone in this tournament, so everybody better fucking listen. No, but we touched on everything, and I think it was really good to hear your thoughts on it. And honest to God, I think you did an amazing job setting up the bracket as a whole in these matchups, because they are really, really fun across the board, from first round matchups to potential second round matchups. So kudos to you on that.
Well, I went through and I kind of figured out that I wanted to do a 16-man tournament, and then I jotted down names, and I had more than 16 names, and so I shuffled names around and I scratched some people off, and I said, what's interesting and what's been done 1,000 times, and then it was trying to figure out where people go. So I appreciate the kudos, because I did spend a fair amount of time trying to figure out, okay, well, if this is a first round, what are the potential second rounds of this, and how can this be competitive throughout the entire tournament, no matter who wins. And I feel like I kind of set that up. Obviously, people can just absolutely no show, or something can happen or whatever, and it could screw all that up. But I certainly spent some time trying to make it where this would be, on paper at least, a really fucking good King of the Ring tournament.
And then your girlfriend found your notes, and it just said Reaper, Crazy Steve, Shoei, MJF, and she's like, "What the hell is this? Like, what?"
Yeah, what is this again?
Then stop wearing those shirts. But no, thank you for joining us. I said it was going to be a mini-sode. We're at 1 hour and 6 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and cut us off. Right, we went over an hour for this one, but I think it was really good.
A king-sized podcast.
A King's podcast. No, next year I'd love to be in this tournament, you piece of shit, so make sure I get into it.
Stop winning the world title.
Okay, that's fine. I'll be no, thank you for coming on, Newt, and thank everybody for watching. We will talk to you guys next time. Best of luck to everyone in the King of the Ring tournament, and we will talk to you soon.